Okay, thank you for being here this evening. We appreciate it. You have joined the uh, monthly genealogy series for the Spartanburg County Public Library System. My name is Charity Rouse. I am the Director of Local History, and our Kennedy Room serves as the service point for our local and South Carolina history, genealogy, and archival services reference at the library. We are recording this video this evening, and you may find previous videos at our library YouTube page. And you can just search YouTube for Spartanburg Libraries, or you can go to the spartanburglibraries.org website that's on your screen and the logo there, and click the little YouTube link, and it will take you directly to our page. The genealogy programs, both this series and our Genealogy on the Go series of short videos, are available in the genealogy playlist. There's also a small local history playlist, so feel free to check out all of those resources. Let me get to the next page here. So, and just as a reminder, if you have questions in the live session, please type them in the chat box, and my colleague Kristen will catch those and get them to my attention at the end of the program. So, what exactly do I mean by micro-local? Well, these are resources that are produced in a particular location for use in that location. These are not United States federal censuses. They are not state records of any sort. These are records that were made on the local level and stayed on the local level. They are often only found in the geographical area that the records were created in. Sometimes you may find them archived at a local or state archive. Some of our examples were filmed by the state archive, and we have them on microfilm in our research room. One of our examples is a local resource that we were the ones who digitized that resource. So it just depends. Sometimes when they're archived at a state archive, they have not been microfilmed. And so you're literally going to that place to look at the physical record that was made. These are of targeted interest for those in a small geographical area. As you know, if you have exhausted the census and the obituaries and the vital records and whatever is available for that time period on the larger level, you're starting to look for much smaller resources. And these are not often high on a list of items to digitize. If you are a state archive and you are dealing with municipal records, or you have the option to do county-wide records or regional records, you're going to choose the set of records that has the most impact. So some of these items are only of real interest to a small number of people, so they do not always make it to the big aggregators. Family Search, for instance, has a lot of the film microfilm that was made of the larger record sets, court records, and those types of things, and they have digitized those. But their big thrust in the first part of their digitization project has been those collections that are of use to the most people. So these are smaller collections, but you know, if that's the collection that your ancestor made it into, then it's worth looking at. So hopefully I will be able to point you to some resources to check out when you've exhausted the larger resources. And Often there's only a small time frame available. So these may be shorter run records, or only one book has survived, or only one book has been digitized or microfilmed out of a run of 4 or 5 books or whatever. This is not deeds where county deeds can be hundreds or thousands of volumes of deeds. These are a handful of volumes that cover a smaller time frame. So some types of microlocal records, these are examples. It's not an exhaustive list. And we'll look at some of the left-hand column tonight, and then continue through some of the additional bottom of the left-hand column and the right-hand column, plus some other resources. But the city or county clerk, depending on the locality, is going to be responsible for municipal court records, for special or called court and the minutes thereof, county or city council meetings. Somebody has to record what was done, what actions were taken. These are very much micro-local records. You're also going to find some birth, marriage, or death records outside of mandated state reporting. And then also just a variety of smaller records made by local administrations and local government. For local businesses or organizations, you may find funeral home records, store, hotel, or other ledgers, account books, who owed how much money, who is purchasing fabric versus alcohol versus groceries, those types of things. You may find church records, and I did a whole presentation on church records. It's in the video archive. We won't talk much about those in this series, and then we have clubs and community boards and their records. And these would be things like, we have the records of the Ladies Library Association and the Kennedy Free Library Board of Directors. So we have our own history in that as the library. Newspapers can also be a good micro-local resource, especially when you're looking at the what's happening columns, the social pages, and that kind of thing. Not just the news that makes the front page, but the church meetings and the women's suffrage group meetings and the local political meetings and various organizations. So there are a lot of places you can look. Yes, it is going to feel at times like a needle in a haystack, because that's just what happens sometimes when you get into these genealogical weeds. So tonight, we're going to look at a couple of different types of records. Basically, I went to our microfilm drawers and started looking for what are the sets where we have typically between 1 and 3 rolls of microfilm, or it's a section of microfilm shared with something else. And so I came up with a number of examples that could be helpful if this is your ancestor. And these are types of records that I'm using Spartanburg County as the example, because that's what I have available. But also you may find similar types of records in other localities, again, for that locality. So estrays would be wandering livestock or animals, occasionally people, but more often you see livestock and animals. I couldn't find any examples of people in what we had. Limited years survive for Spartanburg, and very limited years on microfilm. This is a microfilm filmed by the South Carolina Department of Archives and History, SCDAH. And so you may or may not be able to find additional years from the county clerk of court. And there may be more boxes of records at the state archives that have just never been microfilmed. We are trying to make sure we have a copy of everything that has been microfilmed for Spartanburg Union and Cherokee counties, which is our primary collecting district. But, you know, sometimes something will slip through the cracks. Please note that on any of these resources, an index may or may not be available. It may or may not have been transferred to the archive at the same time and be in the same place or findable, or it may or may not have been microfilmed. So just know some of this you may have to do some digging. So this is what the record book looks like. And this is for 1836. And on the 19th of May, we have a pony taken up by Sam Thorpe, a Bay Indian pony, 5 years old, with black mane and tail hind legs white about halfway to his gambrel. Joints blaze to tan, his tail cut tolerable short. Mane, legs, and feet considerably gorse. I can't read the handwriting there, and I don't know enough about horses to know what the terms might be. Outback and weathers a little galled, with the saddle a natural trotter. Again, a word I couldn't read. A little shod all round. John Grogan, magistrate, assesses a $30 value. Now, there was no note that they ever found the owner of said animal, and we would have to check the law of the day. But in this, there's a little bit of finders keepers that often happens. But they're registering this stray animal that they have found and they have fed and that kind of thing, so that they might be able to get compensated for that, or presumably be able to keep it. Further down on the page, it does say that on September 4th of 1836, 3 men, J.C. Rowland, Ladson Griffin, and Richard Fondley, were sent to appraise 2 ebony oxen. There may be other records in the same court docket, but in a different ledger, regarding where the oxen were found. But these 3 men appraised the oxen at $38.50. And they attested to it. And you see here, J.C. Rowland was able to sign. The other 2 made their marks. So these records are in a volume of estrays, stray animals and such, but because it's one case and then weeks or months and then another case, these are being pulled by the court clerk out of the larger proceedings of the clerk of the court. So you may want to check court records for similar dates and see if you can find corresponding cases with more information. And then a third example, on 9 January 1837, this talks about Alan Turner found a horse, and J.C. Petty, who was the magistrate, sent 3 men to appraise the horse. And that was appraised at $50. So on the right here, on the right-hand side, it does give space for more information, but they're not following up with what happened with the case. So another set of records that can be very helpful to look for would be tax lists. This is an assessor's return of taxable personal property for 1868. 1868 is particularly important because that is one of the first years, if not the first year, that all men, plus a few widows, were assessed for personal property tax, not just white landowners, but all men, white or black. We do have limited years surviving for Spartanburg. Again, this was on microfilm from the South Carolina Department of Archives and History. Other years may or may not be available in ledger form. And this is not a complete 1868 tax list. It is a partial list. So, and again, an index may or may not be available, but this recorder listed, this is a copy, and it's an alphabetical-ish listing, at least within the first letter of the last name. And you'll see the full page in a minute. But this gives names of property holders, the auditor's claim. So if there was an auditor's claim from the county auditor. So this counts up horses, cattle, mules and asses, sheep and goats, hogs, gold and silver watches and plate. So like silver plate utensils. Pianofortes, melodeons, or cabinet organs. Pleasure carriages, dogs. Average value of property appertaining to merchandise. Average value of property appertaining to manufacturing. Value of manufactured articles on hand for 1 year or more. And of engines, tools, etc., etc. Value of monies, including bank bills and circulating notes. Value of all credits, what's owed to you. Stocks of any company or corporation out of that state except national banks. Bonds not exempt from taxation. Annual value of all leases except permanent leases. So if you rent property out. Value of all other property. And then total value of all the taxable personal property. And then there's another column for the assessor to write things down. Please note that I have pulled the top of 2 pages in a spread. And from the microfilm, I couldn't tell whether these were left and right facing pages or front and back of one page. So one of the best things to do is to always check the page before and the page after, because that can help you know whether it's a 1-page form or a 2-page form, or I have seen 3-page forms in some cases. So you don't want to miss an important page, but you also want to make sure that you're getting the pages for your person and not the facing page that's for somebody else, the end of someone else's record, and then the not getting the back of the page that you're on for your person. So this is what the full page looks like. So in Spartanburg County, a lot of people have horses, cattle, not so many mules, some sheep and goats, a lot of people have hogs. Very few nobody has watches and silver plate or are claiming musical instruments. 3 people have pleasure carriages. A bunch of people have dogs. And then 3 of them are manufacturers. And then some have manufactured goods. So that would be for people who might be a merchant of some sort, the middleman, basically. And then you get the values of the property at the far side. So this can tell us a lot about what our ancestors or our people of interest have and are interested in. Now, this is the L page. This is the next page. So it started with the Ks, continues with the L's. And you will notice that this is not an alphabetical order within the L's, because we've got Lee and then Lankford and Lowe and Lipscomb and Lovelace, but they're all L surnames. So just something to keep an eye on. And in a larger assessor's region, this is the 4th assessor's region in Spartanburg. But you may find that in a larger place, there are going to be more pages of people to look at. And again, a few of these people did have gold and silver watches and plate. So you never know. You don't know what the person might have until you take a look at the records. On that second page, it continues down that a number have manufacturing and manufactured articles on hand. So another record set that you will find handy, if you can find it for the right time period, will be the real estate mortgage, crop lien, and mechanics lien records. This is book A, which indicates that it may have been the first book in this series, and it covers 1872 and 1873. We have a number of these microfilms, and we have Spartanburg County and we have City of Spartanburg real estate mortgage reels of microfilm. So some may have been kept on city level, some on county level. Never hurts to ask, never hurts to look. And I know that the Register of Deeds office does have more of this and post 1900. So if you're looking for someone who may have been a sharecropper, they may show up in these records. Now, doesn't mean they will, but they might. And this one happens to be not indexed, or at least not indexed in this book. There may be a separate index that we don't have access to. So you may have to do some reading through things, but it gets you some good information. On this one, this is a 2-page spread, and T.N. Walker to F.M. Tremere. And F.M. Tremere seems to be someone who lent a number of people money for mortgages. And so you may find that the same person as the lender is in a series of mortgages or agreements in a row, and that they're filing a bunch of things together that may be from slightly different dates. But they're registering the mortgage so that it's legally known that $1,000 is being lent. And it talks about the property that is being held up as an account for the mortgage. And it does say over here in the left-hand margin that it was paid off. So it was registered that it was, and then the court later went back in and said, yep, paid off. Down here, we have witnesses attesting to the fact that the mortgage happened and coming into the court to say, yes, we saw them sign this document. We saw the money change hands. The money didn't necessarily change hands in front of the magistrate or the clerk of court, but the witnesses came and filed the document. And you can tell this is all in a clerk's hand. So these are the clerk's copies of these documents, not the originals, original 2 copies that would have been given to the mortgagee and the mortgager. So this next one, again, with James Moss to F.M. Tremere, and Mr. Moss is offering his registering the mortgage, and always continue to look, because we have a rather lengthy mortgage here. And then, and this says it's a copy of the note that was agreed upon. And then there is a note from Mr. Moss, addenda. And then the witnesses are saying, yep, we saw this transaction happen. And then Benjamin Wofford, judge of probate for Spartanburg County, pulls the wife of James Moss in to interview her as to whether she is okay with the mortgage happening. Now, please remember, in South Carolina, we had dower rights for women much longer than than any other state. Our dower rights for women were in place until 1985, well within the modern era. So prior to 1985, if a man wanted to buy or sell property, particularly sell property, and he was married, the wife had to independently, separately, in a different room, attest to the judge or clerk of court that they were okay with their husband taking this action with the property and it, mortgaging it, whatever. The woman was not coerced into allowing him to, that she was okay with him doing, because dower rights at their base were to protect the women from being taken advantage of, left penniless, and left as wards of the state. South Carolina and its chivalry kept that going a lot longer than any other state, but that's okay. This is 1872, so it's well within the period where women didn't have a lot of rights. And so this was one way to protect one of the few rights that they did have. So this is a crop lien, and it's actually a couple of crop liens, just to show as an example. It looks an awful lot like a mortgage, and it says, this first one, Aaron Morgan to Barry Robertson, lien on crop. And there were state laws that allowed for crop liens, and it's for supplies not to succeed in value $110 to enable him to carry on said business for the present year. And then he will pay it back within when the crop comes in. And it was witnessed and registered, again, 1872. And so the crop liens are going to be where you find people who don't necessarily own the property, but they own all or part rights in the crop being raised on that property. And so it's just something to keep an eye out for. You do want to look for who the witnesses are, because those may be neighbors, they may be family members. One of the things I think very interesting is you'll notice on these two adjacent crop liens, the witnesses are a W.A. Hill and a B.T.R.F. Hill, and it may be an A. Over here, it's, again, these two hills are the same people witnessing. And then you also see that L.A. Hill here, who is loaning Harry Bobo money for his crop, is also loaning money to William Maddox there. So again, you may find the same lenders multiple times, and that's something to look at. If your ancestor is the lender in a lot of these documents, then they were probably a pretty good businessman and or had a fair amount of cash on hand for whatever reason. And so they were able to loan money. So city clerk records, city council minutes. And these are a wonderful resource that we have in our collection. The originals are a little bit in limbo right now, but they are being archived for the city right now. But we have digitized the early Spartanburg City Council minutes ledger books, and the collection covers from September 3, 1850 to 1879 and 1889 to 1919. If anyone happens to know where the volume that covers 1879 to 1889 happens to be, we'd love to be able to digitize it. It seems to have gone missing. So, but this is a time period, especially in that 1890 period, where we don't have a census, a federal census, because that burned. So you're looking at these local resources, trying to put your ancestor in a time and place and tie him or her to a location. These are fascinating records because this is, you know, every little disagreement that somebody had with their neighbor in this time period might end up in front of city council if you lived in the city of Spartanburg. And there are county council minutes as well. I just don't happen to be able to get my hands on those right now. But the city council we have available for you. Now, differently from these other records that I've highlighted earlier, these are indexed and the handwritten text has been transcribed because your lovely library staff members, interns, and at least one volunteer, I believe, have been very busy making sure this information is accessible to you. So, one of the things that you need to remember to check, besides calling the local history room at the library closest to where your ancestors lived or the neighboring larger library system that may cover information from the smaller neighboring counties. Check for microfilm, check their catalog for various things. Later, next month, probably we'll be looking at some of the books that we have on our shelves and in our archival collections that are not yet digitized, and that may help you immensely with finding your ancestors on the local level. But this one is right out there on the web. And these are Google searchable. You may be able to find them that way. It's probably easier to go into our collection and drill down in just the collection. You'll get a lot fewer random hits than you will in Google itself. But our SCPL Historical Digital Collections is on our library's website at spartanburglibraries.org. When you go to the main page of the website, you will see a couple of choices: search the catalog, search learning tools, and search downloadables. So you're going to want to click learning tools. And you have options to go through all of our databases, or you can click on the top right-hand option, which is our A to Z database list. I tend to do that. It's an easier place to find things. And you're looking for SCPL Historical Digital Collections, which will be in a list with our SCPL obituary indexing, our SCPL news indexing, and our SCPL archival holdings link for archive space. So you can search any of those too. And those are all collections that are library staff produced database holdings. And so we are doing the work to make these items accessible to you. You can also shortcut and just Google SCPL Historical Digital Collections. It'll pop up with a content DM, SCPL Historical Digital Collections, and you will get there that way. So this is the front page of our digital collections. We currently have 22 collections, and these are composite collections. So they're not always from one donor. They are more topical in nature. A couple of them are one donor collections. But we have historical Spartanburg County maps. We have an ever-growing Spartanburg County aerial images collection. So if you're having trouble finding like a house or property on other maps, we may have aerial images of that part of the county, and you may be able to at least see what the outline from an airplane looked like of your property or your house. Not all those are, that is a collection in progress. So there are a lot of aerial images that have not been digitized yet. So if you don't see your part of the county or an identifier close to what you're looking for, do contact us, because we can check notes that came with that collection to see what we have. But we've got 22 collections. Other collections, I didn't screenshot this, but other collections, World War I in Spartanburg County with our Camp Wadsworth collections, World War II and Camp Croft collections from a variety of sources, African American experience, maps, the William Lynch postcard collection, which is a digital only collection. We do not own those postcards, but Mr. Lynch was gracious enough to allow us to digitize his collection, and they are wonderful. They made postcards of everything. You will be surprised if you go wander through that collection. So on this, you can just scroll down to the City of Spartanburg collection. When I checked today, it was at the bottom of that first page. And our City of Spartanburg collection talks a little bit. You get an overview of the collection on the entry page. And City of Spartanburg as an independent town or city government started in 1831. And that's when we received our official incorporation from the state government. Although we were designated 1875 or 1785, we were told we needed to pick a courthouse for the county following the revolution. And so in 1787, our courthouse was founded and built. And so we have a number of things in this collection, including minute books, official documents, photographs, and publications generated or collected by city government. And then if you can either hit browse or you can hit view all items. And records 10 of 11 in the browse, top handful are here, and these are council minutes. Now, because of how the collections were named, they are not in chronological order. They are in, because they spelled out the months, so March, November, November. But in the description, You get second ledger, fifth ledger, sixth ledger. As I indicated, we're missing one of the ledgers in the middle there. So, that might end up being 7.5 or whichever 0.5. You will see in this screen that within the City of Spartanburg collection, they are pulling items from historical Spartanburg County maps, aerial images, William Lynch postcard collection, etc., potentially. Now, none of these are checked, so they are not actually being pulled from in this immediate collection, but you can search other collections from this page. And you can also, there are subject listings that you can see. 7 volumes are administrative records, and these are the council minutes. So I randomly chose one of the more colorful books that we scanned the front cover of. And this is the 1895 to 1905. And this is what it looks like. We scan all of the pages, so you get the end papers. Sometimes it's blank papers, and then you get page numbers in Roman numerals until we get to the first numbered page. At the bottom of the page, if you scroll down, you get to an object description, and this is searchable. This is what Google's looking at, and it tells you the ledger begins on October 20th, 1895 and ends November 8th, 1905. There are missing pages throughout the volume. Blank pages are not scanned in the internal part of the volume, although end papers typically are. And it does contain glued newspaper clippings, papers stapled and glued onto pages, and loose inserts which have been scanned on the pages they appear. So you may find multiple scans of the same page with a newspaper clipping folded up so you can see what was underneath it, folded down so you can see what was on the newspaper clipping. You get subject headings that you can click and see what else is in that subject heading. You get a description. It's 497 pages, and that there are a couple missing pages. And that it is on loan from the administrative offices of the City of Spartanburg and currently housed in our archival collections at the library. And then you also get the rights. And for most of our collections, they are just lost the name of the program. I'll think of it in a minute. But they are Creative Commons licensed. Thank you. And they are available for people to use for their own personal work. If you do want to publish something in a print material or online in some way, we do ask that you let us know how you want to use it. Depending on what the usage is, there may be a small charge, and it also depends on the collection. So before republishing something, do check for what restrictions there are. Some of our collections have restrictions by the donor families, and some of our collections are well out of copyright date. For instance, in these ledgers, a lot of this would be fair use because it is prior to copyright restrictions. So when I click into that minutes volume, on page 16 and 17, which is what I'm showing here, which is image 7, because 2 pages to 1 image because they were scanned open. And at the bottom here, you see there is a transcript. So this is a transcript that we have had volunteer or primarily interns and staff members working on these transcripts. This is an internal index to this volume. So Sometimes you luck out and the clerk did some work for you. Do please understand, spelling is a 20th century invention, and spelling is inconsistent. So if phonetically it works to spell the name, please remember that the clerk of court was writing these minutes from oral conversation happening in the room. And so they spelled it how they thought it was in the moment. So it could be spelled a little weird. But all of the transcripts at the bottom of the pages here are text searchable. And so, and linked to the image that the words appear on. So those are searchable. This is a later page, just so you can see a little bit about what it is. Present was Mayor A.B. Calvert, and Alderman Joseph Amos, R.A. Robinson, R.F. Chapman, H.J. Johnson, J.A. Caldwell. The minutes of the last meetings were read and confirmed. And then there were some petitions. Now I got to this particular page and you can see that there's a pasted in text block as well. So that was somebody bringing their petition and they had it typed and the clerk said, oh, good, I don't have to rewrite this. I can just paste this in. And so I had searched for Montgomery because Montgomery is a very common and city at that time period. And it came up on this page. So it can be searched by name. It can be searched by full text. Because we have done the work to transcribe. At least I got most of the way through before my unstable internet went completely kaput. Sorry about that. Kristen, can you hear me now? Okay, good. Something is still loading on my page and I'm not sure what it was. I was going to show you in the historical digital collections. Let me see. Okay, let me share this. Because I realized that you guys could not see the image very well. So this is that Montgomery image on page 41. And so you can see that on this top right-hand side of the page is this typed petition that was pasted into the book. And it's about getting your claims paid for things that you have purchased due to your work with the city. And you will see that there are some notations in the various side columns as well. So it's handwritten. Some of the clerks have pretty good handwriting, and many of the clerks have not great handwriting. So we're always happy when they have pasted something in that allows you to see it better. And it does have a listing of claims owed and reported on. So but it's a great option for seeing what's happening in Spartanburg and what's happening in other places. And the other thing to remember is that these are records in Spartanburg County, in the city of Spartanburg, that are unique to this location, but that does not mean that they aren't types of records that you can find in other places. Sometimes you have to dig, sometimes you have to ask questions. 5 years ago, we didn't really know about the city ledgers, and then we were approached about scanning them, and we have scanned them, we have transcribed them, we have indexed them. And so that is very helpful. And the indexes show up here in the thing, and it's 2 different chunks, part 1 and part 2. And these are, okay, it didn't like me. These are in the transcript part. So but this is just a name by name index with the various times that they are listed in these ledgers. So that can also help you find your people. And I am going to back out there, and I'm going to see if I can find the chat and see what comments and questions are made. So if you have questions, if there is something that you really want me to talk about in one of the next 2 sessions, please feel free to drop it into the chat box or email it to our K-Room account, and I'll get that in there. Yes, we are going to do these micro-local resources tonight, February and March. In April, we're going to be talking about the launch of the 1950 census and how to find your people in that census before it gets indexed, because the digital images will be dropped by the National Archive onto the World Wide Web on their website, and then everyone will be scrambling to index. And if it's anything like 10 years ago, genealogists will crash the National Archives website multiple times in the first few days and weeks that the census images are available. Hopefully they have planned better. So, and while I'm on the historical digital collections, let me just show you some of the other topics that we have. We have the William Lynch postcard collection that has some great images in it. Willis, there were a couple photographers with the last name of Willis who did a lot of photography for the newspaper and for other people in the early half of the 20th century. We have some stereographic photographs. We have Black history. in one of the other sessions, we're going to talk a little bit about funeral homes and some of those resources. So we've got the Bessie Norris Wofford Collected Funeral Programs collection. Here's the City of Spartanburg collection. So you get a little thumbnail of the collection names here, and then you get the page where it lists what it is. We've partnered with Spartanburg Regional Healthcare System, and we have a collection of theirs that we host. We've got some scrapbooks. Episcopal Church of the Advent is another community group we have collaborated with to digitize some of their early records. So if you have Episcopal Church of the Advent ancestors, that's going to be a collection you might want to look at. Spartanburg County in World War I and World War II. We have some Confederate Spartanburg items. Gas Attack magazine was Camp Wadsworth, which was World War I, and it is a collection of the publication that was produced at camp. We have a cookbook collection, which is just a lot of fun. Lots of Jell-O recipes, lots of Jell-O recipes. We have some yearbooks, and we have some oral histories. So our collection is ever growing and changing. We've got a couple of projects in the works right now. Okay, let me see what comments. And so Margaret says she found it difficult to research in library systems such as Barnwell County because they are part of a regional library system. That can be a challenge, but it can also be helpful. You may need to check to see where the local history room is that serves the composite regional library system. Each county library within that system may have a small local history collection, but they may have also transferred things or structured things under one particular larger collection. But yeah, it can be a challenge. Some counties, Union County Library System doesn't have any local history anymore. They, in their latest renovation, basically just dumped all of their local history stuff on the county museum, which has relatively limited hours and very little space for researchers, but they've got a lot of resources. So sometimes you need to find the alternative place and just hope, pray, and cross your fingers. But we do collect what we can of Union, Cherokee, and Spartanburg County because that is the Pinckney district, and we cover all three. So, yep. Well, we are glad that you appreciate the digitization and transcription. Continue to use it, because if people use the collections, it gives us the chance to say to our systems people who are paying for the server space, et cetera, hey, this is worth it. People are using our materials. So we do thank you if you can use this. Now, we participate, our historical digital collections do participate in the South Carolina Digital Library and the Digital Public Library of America. So you may find our items at different places because we cooperatively allow them to feed up the system. You will find a lot of records coming online from larger archives and libraries. New York Public is one, Library of Congress is another, that have some rather significant image collections that have been digitized and released over the last couple of years. So keep looking. You never know what's going to be digitized tomorrow. Family Search is another place to look. And that is more of the records, less of the photos in their government records collection and what they've microfilmed. But we will look at some more micro local collections and how to get to them, where to find them, what to search for next month and in March, first Monday nights. And then April, we'll talk about the census. And can't remember what May is planned to be right now. June is going to be a DNA of some sort, DNA talk of some sort. So Glad everybody is here tonight, and thank you for coming, and feel free to drop us an email if you have further questions that come up in the middle of the night. Thanks so much. And stop share, and I need to find the stop recording. Yes.